education, which means having the students make meaningful connections and differences in their community while learning the curriculum. Mike also takes more than 1,000 students a year to Wyoming and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park to participate in place-based learning and environmental experiences. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. And your connection was pretty good, seeing as how you're in space. So that's yeah, you're doing well. No problem. I'm going to share some stuff. Well, now I'm freezing. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, yep. Yes. If
I have to make you host.
Okay, that's all right. Let me know when you're ready.
You are ready.
Okay, try that.
Mike, you may need to keep an eye and see if any more participants try to join. You'll be the
good
one.
Point. I should. Yep.
Thank you.
That sounds good. All right. Okay, let me see.
You're getting there.
Are you
You
okay?
You had it. There you go.
You got it?
That's
Okay.
it.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So it's acting a little weird. It's different than normal. Probably the last iPad update. I'm not seeing you. I'm seeing my screen, but that's okay. Just know that if you raise your hand, I won't see that. So just yell out, please. That's not being rude at all.
Maybe when we take questions, Kathy can kind of
Absolutely.
watch the screen and see
Yes.
that.
I'll get rid of this at the end, and then yes. So the way I usually do this is I present for like 25 minutes or so, because then I leave the rest of the time for you to ask better questions, and then I'll go back and fill all that time, whatever you want, with and all the stuff that you really care about. So I'll do the background of it, and then please ask anything you want, because it actually helps us make these better. So again, thank you for letting me be here. And I do have my own question. I would love at the end, I want to know the history of the name Mule Skinners. And I know it's a Democratic group, great. I just would love to know the history of that. So I'm going to talk about the nature school that's going in, and we're getting there. We're getting so close. It's going to happen. And this has a little history, but before we do, just what I'm going to talk about today is we could talk for hours, but I'm going to try to talk about the explorations they'll have out there. The citizen science we'll do out there. Citizen science means that the kids are actually, we always do activities, but the kids are actually collecting data that will be used by scientists. And there's certain things on that I'll talk about. And then I'm a really big proponent, as we talked about earlier, of service learning. In other words, students should, yes, of course, students should learn, but then they should use that learning to do something that improves their place, which means their community. And that could be their little place, which is their school or their home. Then the next bigger place is their city or town, community. Then their county, their state, their country, and eventually the planets are our place too, but it's just a bigger circle. So we're really big into trying to help. And it should not always be science, place-based. It's not place-based science, it's place-based learning. And so when we say service learning, we want them doing things that sure help the environment or things like that, but also to help people. And so you'll see that that's going to be a big part of our programs. All right, so just to give you a little background of where we are, this is one half of the Nature School property, and that was donated by Hank Williams, the late Hank Williams, the editor, former editor.
Waters. Sorry.
I'm sorry. What did I say? Williams?
Yes.
I don't know what's wrong with me. Hank Waters, thank you, and Vicki Russell. And they donated 207 acres. And as you probably know, Hank was the Columbia Tribune former editor, and we so regret. He was around to give us this land, and he was around to see all the blueprints of what's going to be built. We so wish he'd be around to actually walk in the doors for the first time. But Vicki Russell, his wife, and the family will be. So what's outlined here is one half of that 207 acres. The part that's to the top of the screen above the red line, they still have ownership of that for a little while, but it's already been signed off. When they are ready, that will become part of the nature school property too. And technically speaking, that all 211 acres were donated to the Missouri Department of Conservation for the nature school. And then Columbia Public Schools will rent that for 40 years for $1 a year. So if you want to make an impact, you can rent that for $1. But and then after 40 years, we get to do that again. But that'll probably be somebody else's problem, and I probably won't be here for that. But you can see that we're going to have elderberry fields, which are already there. The school building site, a lot of prairie restoration, because right now it was like just fescue and things like that. There's 2 ponds there fully stocked for fishing, and public will be able to fish there at times too. And then a whole bunch of trails. What I really like on the next screen, oh, and just so you know where we are, you see Highway 63 on your right. If we were to go north a little bit towards the top of your screen, right off the screen would be the KOMU news station. So just to give you a kind of an idea where we are. Done a little bit friendlier way. What is really great about this property is if you look at that far left-hand top corner, it then borders Three Creeks Conservation Area. So while we have 100 acres now, 207 acres later, we actually have access to, for hiking and different projects, hundreds of, or I think it's over 1,000 acres of Three Creeks Conservation Area. So some of the activities first, then we'll get into the nitty gritty. We do have the pond. We also do science camps, and I'll go all into who's going to be there student-wise, but we do science camps for middle school. We have had to rent different properties. We used to go to Lake of the Ozarks, and that was great, but buses and bus drivers are just such a problem, and they're spending too much of their time on buses and not camping stuff. So we started renting local properties, Camp Hickory Hill, Diabetic Camp. All those ponds there actually were overfilled with nutrients, like fertilizer runoffs, and there were no fish in there. So unfortunately, all the kids' first fishing experiences were bad because there's no fish. Now we have these 2 ponds. Missouri Department of Conservation stocks them for us every year. And here you see a couple pictures. These kids are catching their first fish. And why do we do camps and fishing? This is a bad study because it's tiny, but our informal studies of asking the kids, 80% of them have never caught a fish before. Almost 80% of them have never camped in a tent before. Their first time was with us, the science department. And then I think you'll see canoe. Yep, here we go. Canoeing. 70% have never been in a canoe. And so we think these are experiences that every kid and every adult should have. So you can see in the background of that lower picture, there's our tents. That's what they sleep in. They're canoeing. You can imagine with 70% never canoeing before, and then we have about 20 canoes on the water. It kind of looks like bumper boats for a while, but then they start getting it and they start meandering and getting to explore. And they're just learning things. Is canoeing in our curriculum? No, but it's just one of those life experiences that we should have. But identifying fish and things like that is part of our curriculum. They'll participate in archery. As you can see at this time, it was around Halloween, so they were bowing and arrowing at different pumpkins and learning the techniques through that. And that is through actually the PE department. Of course, we want a lot of it to be okay, I need to hit somebody in the waiting room here because that just popped up and I don't want to leave them. So hold on. All right, I'm admitting Alice Turner. Did my screen go away?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, so all right, I'll do that again. Hold on. Okay, is it back?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. One of the big things about the nature school, and frankly, we want this everywhere, is we want less structured time. So of course, we're going to teach the curriculum that we need and the practices that they should be doing. But kids don't get time to just explore and find out what their favorites are anymore. So a big portion of our curriculum when the students start arriving there in earnest next year, and then even more when the building is built, will be just exploring. And then what they'll have to do is practice their English language skills and then do some kind of communication piece that teaches others what their favorite thing is. So their favorite thing could be a plant. Everybody seems to love mushrooms. It was all over Facebook, this year, and just finding those kind of things. But the big thing is trying to take that terror away from presenting to a group that they don't get to do anymore, but at the same time, while out in nature. This is a big one and frankly new for me. History is, I'll be honest, and I was living in St. Louis, so I'm not saying anything bad about Columbia. But when I went to school, I had history teachers that we simply read textbooks and it was not engaged. And then we answered worksheets, and I didn't like history. I didn't like social studies. Now I see what some of these people are doing, and these great teachers in the classroom. It's like, oh my gosh, I would have really liked. So we know that a lot of people don't know the history of Boone County or Columbia or Missouri. So we want to go way back. So every grader is going to spend 7 days at the nature school on their 5th grade year. One part of that curriculum will be not only learning about our environmental place, but learning historically about our place, going all the way back to the Native Americans, how they used the land, things like that. So we have a teepee set up. They're actually going to construct some other homes that past Missouri indigenous people used, just so the kids can see and learn about what they've done. We'll have different storytellers to talk about it. Outdoor cooking will be a big one, and you can see they love it. Matter of fact, you can just look at the face of the boy in the bottom right. He chose to eat that without a fork. But not only will they be making things like, of course they'll be doing s'mores, but we actually want to combine cooking with history here. And so we're going to be using the elderberries. We're going to be using plants that are native to Missouri. We're actually going to be growing some of those. And granted that will probably take 5-10 years for them to produce for us. And in the meantime, we'll bring it in. But we actually want them making like jams and canning and things like that, just to see, because there's a lot of science in making, not necessarily making the jam, but the canning process is all about physics and chemistry and in how we preserve food. So we'll be talking about that and having them go through that. All right. Okay, these are slides from something else. I don't know why it's doing that. Hold on. Let's see. Get some back. Okay, there we go. Okay, I want to say this just because never heard of the word place-based education. First of all, we did not invent it. It's been around for about 30 years, but it hasn't become very popular till recently. And I really loved it because it actually taught me that the way I was teaching, which I think I did a good job of it, but I was missing something. And we all are, particularly science teachers. So what place-based means is that you should try to teach every curriculum standard that we are supposed to teach, whether that's identified by the local school board, the local town, the state, nation, whatever we're supposed to teach. It doesn't change that. It doesn't add new standards, doesn't take any away. But we're asking the teachers, if you're a place-based teacher, that you should teach them from 3 lenses. First, the ecology lens. That's environment. That's the part that science teachers have always done a very good job of. Well, I should say they always have done a good job covering it. What research has shown, though, is that we're not making a big difference, though, on the environmental teaching because, as you've probably seen, oftentimes environmental education is unrealistic. And I am very guilty of this. And I'll say the other two, and I'll give you an example. The other lens we should be teaching for is the economical lens of the place and the cultural lens of the place. And the best way I can say this is give an example of cutting down trees in the rainforest. If I ask you here, does anybody think it would be great if we could stop cutting down trees in the rainforest? All of you would probably say, yeah, it would be really great. And that's what the science teachers and other teachers would preach and talk about and teach. We have a problem. We're cutting down too many trees. However, that is only honoring the ecological standpoint or the lens. And that's typically what we've done on environmental education. For another example real quick would be, we should stop producing greenhouse gases. Great. Wouldn't that be fun? However, we have the other 2 lenses that say it doesn't quite match. That's unrealistic. So back to the rainforest, it'd be great if we'd stop cutting down trees. But if we do a little more research, the people who live down near the rainforest, their economy, it's poor, and their economy completely counts on them making money from either the trees themselves or clearing the trees to make money on crops. And then the culture, both down there and up here, says that we want things made out of wood. And so here's a good example of, we can't just say don't cut down any trees, because that's never going to happen. We want it for our culture. We need it for our economy. But can we now look at it through the 3 lenses and say, can we do this in a more sustainable way? There's going to be developments in the city of Columbia that are going to come, and they're going to take trees away or something, some other prairies or something. That's going to happen. But can we then say, oh, you know what? Here's this lawn, and we're trying to do this at some schools. Here's this lawn we're just mowing. Can that change to a prairie, or can we make that into a forest and try to have it break even? So that's place-based education. Back to the carbon dioxide. We're not going to stop driving. And we're not all going to drive electric vehicles, which actually still produce some. So how do we do it and just make things better? And that's place-based. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I'm not going to bore you with all the research because that's for us. However, I wanted to put on the screen, since this is recorded, if you ever wanted to look at it, this is why we're doing this. These are national, in some case, international studies that basically find, I'm just going to flip through the screen after the first one, found that place-based learning consistently increases stewardship behavior among activities among students. It increases attendance, it increases interest in school, it decreases behavior issues because they care about the projects. Another, I will stop on this one. You've probably seen the headlines, and I see it. I'm probably part of it. My wife is a middle school science teacher at Jeff Middle School. She has it. Teachers are in a rough place right now. Students are in a rough place right now. The morale is bad. What I love about this national research was teachers who use place-based education are just generally happier and they're more satisfied with their jobs. This one again, levels of stress go down. This was 6,200 kids, and it was the achievement gap between poverty and not poverty actually went down. I'm gonna skip these because of these are repeats for other projects that I thought would disappear, but they didn't. Getting there. These are just other activities we do at different, not nature school activities, but the ones we do at school, and that topic for another day maybe. Sorry, we're getting there. There we go. So some of the things we're going to be doing while we're at the nature school is I talked about that history connection. While every fifth grader will be spending 7 days at the nature school area, one of those full days will actually be at the Boone County History and Culture Center. Half of it talking about the culture and half of it talking about the history. And one of the things we really want our students to do is to look back. This is a map, a historic map of Columbia, our town, our place. And we really want them to see what do you still recognize? And one thing we don't do is like, why is Rollins Street called Rollins Street? Why is Providence Providence? Why Stadium's probably a easy one. There's a stadium on it and was for a long time. But why are some of these names of our place? What did they mean? And have them research that. Our goal is that some of our classes will create a really nice professional looking traveling history of Boone County and Columbia exhibit that can go to libraries or other schools or wherever, maybe City Hall someday, whoever would want us to have something that is easy for people to look at. They can see it in a few minutes because people are busy, but to learn about their place. Keep doing this. Sorry, I don't know what setting I have wrong. This is the, I think, really important part to explain, okay, what is the nature school? It's not just going to be a building and land that is available to students, because when that happens, we have a lot of, Columbia is so lucky. We have more parks. I grew up in St. Louis. We moved to Columbia 12 years ago because of the parks, partly because of the parks and the trail systems. It's just, we're really lucky. But if people are busy, they don't go there as enough. And so we didn't want to build a structure that was available. We wanted to build a structure and property that was part of the curriculum. And that's what this is. And I should also say, I don't think I said this earlier, this is not just for Columbia Public Schools, although we are clearly the biggest school district in Boone County. This is for every Boone County school district, parochial, private, homeschool, doesn't matter. They're all involved in what I'm about to show here. So they will, every fifth grader will spend 7 full school days at the nature school. The first visit will be for 4 school days. They will still go home at night, although there'll be camp programs available. They'll still go home. They'll come back for the 4 straight days. And of the first 4 days, first semester, they will do all the discovery things that you would imagine a nature school would do. But the other thing we're really excited about, we wanted to make sure this didn't become a one-hit wonder. And what I mean by that is, and we still do it and love them, there's a lot of field trips that go on that are one-hit wonders. They do the field trip, it's great, but then they never talk about it again. And therefore it makes no impact, except it might pique their interest. And that's important. And we'll still do those. But we didn't want this one to be that. So part of their 4 days there, our staff, which will only be 3 people, will work with these teachers from the classes visiting for those 4 days and help them develop a project, a place-based project that will make their place better at near their home school or are anywhere in our town. Doesn't have to be science. Everybody always thinks of like cleaning something up, or it needs to be deeper than that. It needs to be a longer lasting, but it can be environmental. It can be helping people. It can be whatever, helping animals, doesn't matter. Something to make their place better. They'll also do that that one day to the History Center. They will then be gone, and we'll work with other schools. But in the meantime, we'll be checking in on them every few weeks. And then they'll come back second semester for 3-day follow-up days. And they'll still do all their exploration stuff that you would expect. But part of that, one half of those 3 days, will be them presenting what project they did to make our community better. And then they will invite whoever their community is. It could be their parents, it could be public people, things like that. But if you really stop and think about this, that means only in CPS alone, just because I don't have the numbers for all Boone County, we have 74 fifth grade classes. Then add probably, I'm just making this up, probably 15 more for the rest of Boone County fifth grade classes. So that is almost 100, I'm sorry, about 85 or 90 fifth grade service projects that are going to make our place better in small to medium ways every single year. And so that's what we're hoping to see an impact on, that we keep getting better and better. This here just shows the explorations we can do. Also, every room in the nature school, which I'll show you a picture of in a minute, will be a different themed museum. So we won't be inside often, but sometimes we will, to analyze what we find. One room will be decorated in like a forest museum. One will be an aquatic museum. One will be a prairie museum, and one will be a cave museum, because those are the 4 things we have. We'll be doing citizen science projects, such as there'll be 25 bluebird houses on that 200 acres. I love this one because I can't wait to do this myself. There's actually scientists that want this data. And so we're joining an actual federal project or national project, I should say. And the kids, no matter who's out there, every week they'll be they will go to each bluebird house, and they'll open it, and without harming the birds, they'll take observations. How many eggs were laid? A bluebird, by the way, lays about 3 clutches of eggs a year. So that'll be often. Are there nest materials, or is it abandoned? Did they lay eggs? How many? Then how many hatched? How many birds survived? When did they leave? All that data gets processed and sent over to the national program on Bluebird Nest Watch. And then we get to see the data from that and how that changes over time. In addition to that, it helps bluebirds, and hopefully our population goes up. They'll be taking very specific rainfall and snowfall measurements and sending that to another national network that's trying to increase radar reliability. I talked about the service learning thing, so I won't get you on that. This is what the school will look like. And again, to the left-hand side with all the windows will be 4 classrooms, but then there'll be a kind of museum-like lobby in the middle. And then the right-hand side is what's called a wet lab that also serves as our tornado or storm shelter. So that's why that has no windows. But what that also serves as is, I keep talking about 5th graders. They'll be using the rooms during every school day, and the grounds, of course, but any grade level, kindergarten, preschool, below that, college, adults, any other group can sign up to use the wet lab on any day, and also the grounds. And the wet lab has, tables and movable things. It could be just for a meeting to see the sites, or it could be that they want to do their own, another 8th grade teacher wants to do a field trip, and they can come out as often as they like and use that land. So we picked 5th grade for the 7 days because we thought that was the sweet spot of 5th graders can start to do some great projects, and they're not so old that they have already decided where they want to go. We wanted to be able to shape them if they wanted it, or they may decide that this is not for them, and that's valuable too. This is probably my favorite structure. We stole this idea from the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, where we take 5th graders every year. This is called a council house. It's an indigenous structure that I might butcher this a little bit, but there's 7 seats there, and that represented the 7 different tribes that would often come a couple times a year to have their council meetings, which is why it's named Council House. It has a fire pit in the middle, hole in the top. Columbia Audubon Society donated $30,000, and Dr. Stiepelman $25,000, our former superintendent, to have this constructed. What I love about this structure is it fits 125 5th graders easily. And everybody, because of that stadium seating in there, everybody gets a front row seat. So whether we're doing our fire program, whether we're doing storytelling or a music program, whatever we're doing, which we'll be doing every day, everybody, even if they're top, gets that front row seat. Oh, there's just another picture of it. It's basically think of a giant gazebo, but stadium seating with a fire pit in the middle. There, that is us with our 5th graders down at Great Smoky Mountain Park. And as you can see, just everybody gets that front row seat. So that'll be actually built. The building will start in April and take all of next year to build. The council house will also start in April, but it should be done by early summer. And here's an important question, funding. As we said, the land was all donated by Hank Waters and Vicki Russell. We did, this is not official. I just was curious that what if we had to buy the land, which we couldn't have. We knew it'd be expensive, but if we were to buy the land, it has been appraised at about $4 million. So that would double our project, and obviously we couldn't do it. In addition to doing all the upkeep and trail work and a staff member, things like that, MDC has donated another $1 million in cash to get this going. Columbia Public Schools used saved money and CARES Act money for $2 million. And then we need 1.5 million from private donations. And that was actually that was on purpose and to save taxpayers some money. We could have probably found and squeezed CPS or MDC for more, but we were adamant that we wanted this to be a public place that other people had a hand in and ownership of. I'm very happy to report, and frankly, that 85% number there is probably closer to 90 now because we've gotten some more in. But so 90% of that 1.5 million is already done. Even if we're a percent shy, we'll start in April and just pay CPS back for that. But if you were interested, Como Gives has a campaign right now that you can donate even a little bit if you want. And if you want more pictures of the building or more about the nature school, you can go to BooneCountyNatureSchool.com, and it has some great videos, some drone shots and things like that of kids actually out there and enjoying their time. So I've talked too much, so let me get this off and bring you all back up, and I'm gonna stop sharing, I hope. All right, do I look live now?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So what about this or any of our outdoor programs or science programs? How can I help? Yes, I see Sue. You're muted right now, though.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, I'm on the Friends of Rockbridge State Park, and 2 things I want to mention. First, with this Canton and States, I hope that you're paying attention to that, because it is over that particular development. There have been lots of developments in the last 10 years, but that particular development is over the area that is actually a declared wild area. And
Can you say the name of that again?
The Canton Estates.
Oh, has that been in the news lately?
Not real, but yes.
That's
Yeah.
Gans Creek Wild Area. That's
Yes.
Gans Creek Wild Area.
I am good friends with the Missouri River Relief people, and I know they've been very active on that too.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I hope you keep that in mind, and
Yeah.
also are teaching about that, because it's the part that's undeveloped, a part of the park, and it is very concerning, because it's a good example of where you can't get it back.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
the other thing is, I know that initially there was an idea to try to pair with Rockbridge State Park and Department of Natural Resources.
Yep.
I think you have a better
Mhm.
school and resource than what you were initially planning, because it was more geared to a single special students.
Yeah.
When I say special, a select group.
Right, 100,
Uh, But I think that probably planted the seed. And so,
absolutely. We should talk about that real quick, because you're absolutely right. This idea is actually 5 years old. It just failed the first time. And it had nothing to do with Rockbridge State Park itself failing. It had to do with politics, frankly. And so long story short, because you don't want to hear all this, but when it was first designed, we were copying off of something similar at Bass Pro Shops in Springfield called the Wolf School. And the Wolf School is wonderful, they take 50 kids. It's on a lottery basis of 2 classrooms. And those 50 kids will spend the entire year at the Wolf School. That is their 5th grade year. We thought, oh, let's do that same thing, but let's make ourselves look even better. And we'll do double, we'll do 100 kids. And we were working through Department of Natural Resources at the time. That's where Sarah Parker Pauly was. For reasons I don't even want to, I'm not even hiding it. I don't even understand, frankly, but apparently DNR is more connected to the politics or governor's office than MDC is. And something happened. And while it all was going well, the governor, I believe the way I understood it is, I'm forgetting his name, Schaefer. Did we have a Senator Schaefer, Kurt Schaefer?
Kurt.
Yeah, he got into a dispute with the governor, and the governor pulled the funding for the nature school. And I don't know what the dispute was. We don't know any of that. We weren't told, but it was gone. Looking back on it, some things happened for a reason. It would still be super cool to be in the state park, but we did it wrong. Our whole thing of having 100 kids would have been awesome for those 100 kids. And I say I was part of it. I did it wrong. It would have been wonderful for those 100 kids, but we have thousands of other 5th graders that would never get it. And so this is why we came up with, how do we get every single 5th grader in Boone County for those 7 days in? What made it possible this time is Director Sarah Parker Pauly then switched jobs and went to Missouri Department of Conservation. And a month or 2 after she did that, said, hey, we don't have the same workings as DNR. We can get this done. And Peter and Dr. Stiepelman and I almost were hesitant. It's like, I don't know if we can do this again. We put all that time in. We don't want to be disappointed again. And we decided, well, that's a silly reason. Let's do it. Let's try it. And it's going to happen. And so, yes, thank you for that background. And again, nothing to do with Rockford State Park, but we're going to be a better nature school because of that failure first, because now we're going to reach every kid. We were just kind of misguided a little bit on what we thought was best at the time.
I'll go ahead. I have a couple of questions. I know you're off Tom Bass Road. Did Tom Bass have something to do with that area?
He did. He was actually, so if you don't know, Tom Bass was I might get this slightly wrong, so you'll have to fact check me, but he was an African-American man, and he was either a slave himself or his family slaves or something like that in the past. Forgive me for not knowing exactly, but he was very, very famous for developing this horse bit that we still use today. A horse bit, something in their mouth that helps the horses when they're being led around and racing. He was famous for that, and he was a horse racer, famous. For a while, he was never allowed to get awards because being an African-American, but eventually he did. His property, it's a little disputed, the exact, but his property either cut the very tip corner of where the nature school is going to be, or we're also seeing one map that shows he was just about a quarter mile down the road. So that's why that road was named Tom Bass Road.
I see. Good. I want to know what the status of the building. Has it been started building?
No, it has not. It's been fully designed and blueprinted. We need to go to the county. Matter of fact, that is happening, I think, actually this week. We did the final things, whatever that goes through that architecture for approval codes, I guess it is. Then it's going to the county for the final approval. We did a ceremonial groundbreaking, but the true groundbreaking should be around April 1. And they are building things like pavilions and stuff now, but the real building, April 1, and then it will take all of next year to build and probably be done by about, maybe June of next June, June of 24.
I see.
Yeah.
Funny.
How many groups do you have at one time? You have to have more than one.
Yes, we want to make, this is actually critical, and this is my job, and it's going to be a rough one, but it's important. We can't miss any opportunity, because to get every 5th grader in Boone County out there, we have to use every single day of the school year. And then in the summers, we'll do camps and stuff like that. Every single day has to be used. I mean, like the first day of school and the last day of school, and we'll just work it because districts have different ones. So we'll play with that. The only days we're going to take off from the nature school is probably 2 Fridays every winter month, only to make up snow days, because we don't want a kid that has a snow day to not get it then. So we'll probably have that being our bank of makeup days. But so to do that, we have 4 classrooms. Everyone will be full. So there'll be 100 kids, or in other words, 4 5th grade classrooms every day of the school year at the nature school, not counting any group that signs up to use the land or the wet lab. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Sue and Herb, I see your hand up.
I think Alice may have been before me, but I'll take right after her.
Oh, sorry.
Well, she's not here.
Okay.
Two
I'm
things.
here. I'm here.
Carl and Mari had their hands up too.
All right, Alice.
Okay, let me unmute. Hold on. I'm
Okay.
trying to
are.
unmute here.
You're
No,
you're
you are unmuted.
Okay. Okay, Mike. So I love the nature school. I'm an ex-social studies teacher in a rural area. One of the things I taught about was Native American stuff, which I'm sure you're going to have in the curriculum. And Dr. Stiepelman has spoken to us a couple times, most recently right before he left. And of course, he brought up one of his pride and joys, which is the nature school, and we talked about it. I had brought up the issue of gun safety and getting that in the curriculum, maybe in the public health programs.
Yep.
But Dr. Stiepelman, and with input from former Representative Kip Kendrick, it was his suggestion, thought that the conservation program on gun safety would be very appropriate for the nature school, because you're out in the woods, animals. There's the urban issue too, and so I was just sort of checking if that's still in the plans.
It absolutely is. And so MDC is
Great.
working on developing that program, and they're using, I'll be honest, I haven't used this device, but an airsoft gun or something, pellet gun or something like that. But they are planning on doing that. And what we would do is on that one, because there might be feelings on either way, but that would be offered to all 5th grade classes while they're there. But if a parent wanted to, they could opt out and do another activity for those kids. But the answer is yes, that will be part of the curriculum.
Excellent. Thank you. Very happy.
Yep, good.
It's a beginning. We'll call
Yes.
it that.
Carl and Mari.
Exactly.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Glad that you could be here, and I appreciate this. This is kind of near and dear to my heart. One is just a comment to address Sue with respect to that Canton Estates issue that came before the city council. There was some advocacy for it. Both Betsy Peters and I were kind of leading a bit of the charge on that to try and create a group that took that into consideration. It's still under consideration. Where it's going yet, but that's in the works. But more specifically, this is near and dear to my heart, because I can remember 5th and 6th grade, if I remember all the way back 65 years ago. This is about 1956 or so, and we had a project just like this. So I lived in the Chicago suburbs, and we were sent to a place called Camp Sagawa. It was primarily a science project, but very much like what you're describing here. My project at that time was leeches. I can remember collecting them in ball jars and doing a report and so on, this whole science. And frankly, to be honest with you, that it really did set the stage for eventually a life of science and science research. And it's very seminal. What we did at that time was several days, probably the better part of a week. And they actually had cabins. So we actually stayed there for a while.
Yes.
And I guess the question I have is, I know that you were planning on some kind of tent issues and so on. And even that's helpful, because my kids eventually got to appreciate tents, and kids ought to be introduced to that. But are you anticipating perhaps in the future at some point with some semi-permanent field trips that kids actually go out there and all of that?
That is my absolute dream. That is like phase 2 that I've already talked to Director Pauly about, saying, hey, after this is built, okay, this is priority 1, but can we then start raising funds for that? Because I'll tell you, tents are great, but then they're so not great at the same time. What I mean by that is, I have been out there several times this season, as soon as, because we had tents up for the whole fall season because of our middle school camps. And then we do them again in spring. The tents held up great when kids had their stuff in them. No matter how big of a stake I used, when the windstorms came through, our tents were flying a quarter mile away. We were losing them. I would go out there and 3 of the 35 were standing. And it's like, oh my, and I don't know how to fix it anymore. And so my dream would be, and it doesn't have to be expensive. I've even seen great camps take like wood shed designs and turn them into bunkhouses. And that is what we ultimately need to make camps sustainable. Because right now we're in the business of putting up, ruining, and rebuying tents, and it's getting pricey for that. And so, yeah, the answer is yes. We really want to do that.
Thank you.
I'll take that first offer. 2 quick things.
Yes.
Number one, and you connected with your concept of place, which is great. And plugs, I think, well into my wild enthusiasm for this development, which I've been bugging everybody about. The Three Creeks Township and the Three Creeks Conservation Area, almost adjacent to your land.
Right.
I thought you would know that was first settled, other than by Native Americans, which are important to remember, by freed Black slaves. And it was a vibrant Black community, and constrained by the fact it was damn poor land until it well into the 20th century. And Tom Bass is just one of that community. That should be a critical part of your development of the culture conception of that place. And there's an article that you could read in the Missouri Historical Review. There's a thesis written under Arvis Strickland. If you want to talk to somebody about who to talk to, contact Susan Flotter, whom I think you probably know, founded the American Missouri Parks Association, retired professor of history. Follow that. Number 2, I don't know if I think you must be aware that these kinds of concepts for education of broad student bodies are cropping up across the country. One that we support is in Richmond, Indiana, the Cope Environmental Center. And they serve the county heavily, but also the state. It's Quaker founded.
Great.
And they are good people. And if one wants the source of what has been tried, what worked, what didn't, and just enlarging the circle, Cope Environmental Center, Richmond, Indiana.
Centerville.
Centerville. Sorry, it's outside Richmond. Centerville. They're wide open. Tell them Herb and Sue, tell them call, or Marie, tell them Cope, our daughter, married into that family.
Great.
Which is named.
I love both of your points because we need other organizations, because my background, I'm science, and so the history part, I don't know it. And one person we're counting on, and I will add that to the list, is Brian Flowers, is the supervisor of MDC. He is a history buff, so involved in it. So I'm kind of counting on him, and I'm going to give that name to him too, because he wants to be kind of in charge of the history angle of the nature school, and is helping us with all of that Tom Bass stuff. So thank you for both of those.
Can I just add on that? Susan Flotter actually studied Aldo Leopold. So she's nationally known.
That's wonderful.
And she was on the national board as probably under age 40, National Audubon Board. So her
first woman, youngest person ever.
Yeah.
She's a big timer national.
Yeah.
And so I think she can add a different aspect there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And on the Cope Environmental Center, they started out just as a family farm that a family donated to make it into a science area.
To make sure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And they now have constructed a new building that is one of 22 in the world. That's the top energy efficient, so it's a non-polluting building.
Right.
Whatever.
And I will tell you that we're trying to make the nature school building as environmental friendly as we can and still afford it. So we're not going to be like, it won't be top, but we're doing a lot of things. I think there's that different LEED certifications. I think we're able to get to the second highest because the first highest we wanted to, but it was going to cost so much money and we didn't do
I
it.
understand
Before you go, I want to make sure I wrote this. Are you saying COPE as in COPE?
That's correct. And for Jim Cope, who was the
Jim and Helen Cope.
Jim was the one who figured out the life cycle of the Indiana bat, which has saved many a cave across this nation.
Gotcha. Awesome. I wrote it down and we'll check that out.
And but it's now broadly supported with multi-million-dollar support. So where you want to be.
Yep.
Ruth has her hand up.
Okay.
I had to step away briefly, so forgive me and ignore me if you've covered this. Can you speak to the accessibility of this program?
Yes. I love that. It was not brought up. And I love that question because every single student, we fail if there's a student that cannot experience the nature school, every part of the nature school. And so we fail. However, at the same time, we want to do it in a natural way. Like MDC, they have the money. If we wanted them to, they would pave all our trails concrete, but that's not nature. And so instead, we're going to copy off the city of Columbia, frankly, and we're going to use that pressed shirt so that wheelchairs can go on there, but it's still somewhat natural. But my favorite part of it, and of course the building, because CPS is building it, we don't have to worry a thing about that. That's law now. So that's easy, but it's the outdoor parts. It's not as easy. And so Council House, all of that. But what I'm really excited about, we don't want those that have physical disabilities to actually be confined to just the paths that we make flat. And so MDC, Conservation Department's giving us what's called a track wheelchair. Basically, I wish I had a picture. I should start putting a picture in my presentation, but it is basically a giant wheelchair that has bulldozer treads on it. And it's battery operated. We'll have one of those. They actually own in the state 13 of them, but they're going to repurpose one of them. And then they said if we need more for like a certain function, they will bring them there. But that way, a student that's in a wheelchair or crutches, whatever it is, they'll be able to go in the track chair and operate it themselves if they can. If not, it can be remote for the teacher and go anywhere they want. So above rocks, probably better than the walkers. So that is my favorite part, because what I don't like is I don't want them going through a forest that's paved, because that's a different now I've had some disagreements with certain groups and even inside CPS that say, no, we need to pave it all. It's like, that's not nature. We can do the same thing the other way. And so we're battling that, but we're winning. We want them enjoying nature, no matter if it's down a creek bed, wherever it is, that track chair can get them there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, I have a comment and a question.
Yes.
One is, I don't know if you know the Reverend Larry Brown, but he has just taught a course and is going to do an additional, a second course on Indigenous people in Missouri.
Oh.
So he would be an excellent resource for Indigenous people in this area. He's
I love
former professor at MU.
Was that Larry Brown, Reverend Larry
The
Brown?
Reverend Larry Brown.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
He is a retired professor of geography.
Okay.
As well as a minister.
Great, awesome.
Yeah.
I will go to that.
And he's a storyteller.
Oh, we love that. Yes. Sue, I
Yes.
see your hand up.
Well,
I think they're unmuting.
if Sue isn't ready, I have
Okay,
a question that I wanted to ask,
sure.
which was, were there plantations that had enslaved people on any of the land? You know that. So how will that be addressed?
So Brian Flowers is researching that, and we're getting differing. So there was the Tom Bass that might have been on one portion of it. It does sound like for a large portion of history that it was county land that was deemed that they were going to use for different things. So we're getting mixed reports on that, but he is researching that. And if it was, we're going to definitely use that. One cool thing about it is he did find a plot map, hand-drawn from way back, and I forgot the year, but way back. And it actually plotted that whoever was on the county or city, whatever government of the time, they were setting aside some of that land that we're going to be on for a school. And we thought, how interesting. It took 200 years or whatever it was, but we're now finally going to have a type of school on that land. But to your point though, yes, he is researching that and trying to figure that out.
Finally.
Yeah, okay, Sue's ready.
I just wanted to tell you, I follow your column in the Tribune. I didn't for a long time because I thought it was geared at kids, but I especially like the explanation of why zebras have stripes. But I've been collecting some and I'm going to pass them on to my granddaughter.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Seven.
Yes, we do write. We write them for kids. But well, why I say that is we write them at the one in the paper at a 7th and 8th grade level, which is actually identical to what a newspaper is. And the kids get them every week. But I actually think we have more of an adult following than we have kids. And, you know, I look all smart when I write those probably. I learn all the, you know, the zebra stripes, I was wrong. You know, it's all everything I write on, I'm researching the week before. And it's surprising to me. I love that you said that because I never know what will hit somebody's heart when I write them. And sometimes it's one that I never thought would do that. And then sometimes I get absolutely torn apart in comments over them. The biggest one that you probably would, well, roll carts. Roll cart. That was what, 3-4 years ago. We did a study on roll carts, and all it was about the which one takes more force to move a bag or a cart, you know. But oh my goodness, I got attacked over that. And then it may surprise you that the second biggest attack I got was when I wrote one on those shows that are on TV, Ghost Hunters. And I wrote how there's no, it's a fine pastime, but all the instruments that they use are not scientific and I explained because we've never confirmed a ghost. So how do they know those instruments are finding ghosts? You know, there was a whole letter in the paper about how horrible I was because I was misleading children and there are spirits and whatever, but I was, I never saw that coming. But anytime I do one on evolution, I usually get some hate mail. And but we're science, and that's what we're going to do. And you know,
well, please mention what the findings are for those that hadn't read the zebra one.
About zebras.
Oh yeah, so the zebra one is actually scientists actually used to think it was to confuse predators, as tigers or leopards or whatever, lions went for zebras, it would confuse them. And they found, the first study was that they found that no, it's not confusing them at all. That's not helping. What it confuses is the eyes of biting insects, particularly horseflies. And what they found was a horsefly can see the zebra from a distance, but when it gets closer, and they don't exactly know why, when they looked at high-powered slow-motion cameras, as the horseflies got close to the zebra pattern, it confused them, and they actually threw them off track, and they either missed the zebra or they got disoriented, almost looked like they were drunk flying, and flew right into the zebra and then bounced off. They tested it by then putting zebra print clothing on different horses, things like that. The same thing happened over and over again. And so talk about a history and science connection, though. They do now think some of the ancient tribes that wore that face painting on their bodies, they actually think now that was not symbolic. It was to keep them from being bitten up by these biting insects, because it came from the same locations that evolved, actually, zebras. So very interesting.
While we're talking about equine matters, I thought I would go back to your question about mule skinners.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot.
Basically, a mule skinner is another term for a person who manages a team of mules. And because the Democratic symbol is a donkey, and because mules are a famous product in Missouri, I
Yes.
think
Got it. So it
historically
was,
they decided
yeah,
that's a good name for the
figured the
Democratic
mule,
Club.
it was the Skinner part that I couldn't figure out. So
Yeah.
that does it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there is, I just looked at it on the internet and they said there's a famous old blues song called the Mule Skinner Blues by Jimmy Rogers.
Okay.
Way back when.
Yeah. So, and it's funny that you bring this up and now I could answer it. It may not surprise you to know that there's a couple crazy Facebook groups out there that are attacking everything in education. And somebody mentioned the Mule Skinner group. And they said it was, somebody came back that I finally gathered was Democratic and said that is very derogatory. And they said they were new. And somebody said, no, that is the Democratic group. And he goes, okay, my bad. You know, so but it was just interesting.
Yeah, it's old fashioned.
Yep.
Oh, just to wade in a bit here, in terms of politics and science is not all that different when it comes to roll carts. And the answer to that question, I didn't read your article, but the answer to that question is depends on how much trash you put in a bag versus as to whether or not that, in terms of energy. So I just thought I'd throw that out. Since roll carts are such a big issue in this town.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I learned. And I did my last line. I usually try to put some kind of last line in my articles. And the last line on that one is, you'd know that we must be living in a pretty good community that we get this upset about how our trash is taken away. Either way, so no matter what side you're on, we must live in a pretty good place.
Nancy Oppenhaver has a question in the chat.
Okay.
If
Oh,
you can
sorry.
see that.
Could you read that to me by chance so I don't lose? Because mine's being all weird.
Okay, well, I can't do two things on my phone, but what it was, the gist of it was, could your articles be compiled into a publication?
Yes, that is my goal. Time is my problem, but there have been a lot of people that have asked me to do that. And so I do, because I have them all. And what you don't see is I also have them in, because they're written as 7th and 8th grade level, but I also write, again, that's what's in the paper. That's what you see. But when I send them to teachers, the same story with the same questions is also written in a 4th and 5th grade level and a 2nd and 3rd grade level. Obviously, I take the superfluous text out. We're purposely, the questions are hard and we do that on purpose because they can't just take their finger and fill in the blank. And sometimes my own daughters go to CPS and they said, Dad, everybody hates, they think your articles are too hard. It's like, I know, but we need that. We need them to do that. But anyway, one of these days when I can finally calm down, whenever that is, I do want to try to do that.
Thank you.
Herb.
One more off the cuff suggestion of somebody to try to pull in, if you have not already, is my fellow graduate school mate, different departments, but same time, same school, George Smith.
Oh,
who
yeah.
is a tree hugger, if you don't know it.
No, I did not.
Real tree hugger and and fond of whimsy. If he doesn't read your article, I would be very surprised. And we have both loved the Journal of Irreproducible Results, formerly the Journal of, that's the old title, the Journal of Improbable Research, and the annual Ig Nobel Awards given to people who have made real scientific contributions, but they sound funny. And he's looking forward as a Nobel Prize winner to being called to hand out at least one of those next year.
Nice.
So anyway, pull him in if you can.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I actually had him out. So I have 100 middle and high school science teachers that I supervise. And about when the year he won, we had him in for one of our professional development days to give a speech to us.
He loves that stuff.
Yeah, he was great. And such a real guy.
Yes.
All right. I think we've come to the end of another thrilling Mule Skinners meeting here.
It's been great.
It has been great, especially the zebras and all the rest of it. I mean, this is kind of fun. But I wanted to thank Mike, and I wanted to thank all the folks that have attended and interacted and so on. We'll be meeting again next week. I think David will be back.
No,
No.
January
Oh,
7th.
January 7th. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've been corrected by my boss. And so we'll meet January 7th, and I expect David will be back and we can continue this driving the mule thing till the cows come home, if you will.
Yes.
But thank you all.
Can
for
I
being
just
here.
say, can I
Sure.
just say, Mike, I want to tell you that especially when I started reading the newspaper, I realized how very fortunate we are as a community to
Mhm.
have you doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much.
I-
Thank you very much.
I agree. Thank
Ditto
you.
that, everybody.
Just
Yeah.
a point of privilege here. I do remember there was something I was going to say, and then I forgot what I was going to say. And you don't have to weigh in on this, Mike, if you don't want to. But this controversy versus paving or not paving trails in areas like this. I mean, we took this up in the mid 2000s. I kind of lost that fight. I was hoping we would get non-paved trails. Apparently, the city decided we were going to go with paved trails, so
Right.
that fight was lost. But nonetheless, you had the autonomy not to do that, so I appreciate your
Yeah,
you're moving forward with that
Yeah.
with that idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
nope, my pleasure.
Thank you all, and Merry Christmas and have a happy
Everybody.
holiday, everybody out there. Hope to
It was
see
a
you
pleasure.
later.
With you. Have a good Christmas.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
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 I just realized I'm going to be ending the meeting for you all. So it's, or do you want me to?
Yeah,
Do you want me to?
that's fine.
No, that's fine.
Okay,
Go.
okay, all right. I'd have a good day.
Bye. Thanks.